Always check this, make sure we're actually live. But I think we are. Hello, friends. This is Allison with the Gallatin County Democrats. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the executive director. And every Tuesday and Thursday during the Montana Legislature, we get to have a conversation with one of our elected Democrats who's serving this session. And tonight we have Senator Chris Pope from Senate District 31. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Allison. It's a nice break.
Yeah, it is always nice to get to catch up with you, and hear what's going on. So for those watching, feel free to post questions. I'll be looking at those and can ask as we go. I do have some questions in advance, but really it's just what's new and what should we be aware of that you know about right now, because there's a lot going on, as always.
There's a lot going on, and I am a policy type legislator. I don't sit on any of the budget committees. So what happens in a 90-day period, which is our session, at the 45-day mark, there's a pivot where the first 45 days are very policy intensive. And then we move to the budget and we try to fit all this policy we've been discussing and voting on and fit it into a budget. Our requirement in the state of Montana, which is a very good thing, is that our budgets need to balance.
Right.
And there's you don't leave Helena without a balanced budget. So that's really our only responsibility, frankly. So we're past the halfway point, happily. I think at this point, so the House is dealing with all the Senate bills that have been passed in the past, 45 days, say, and the House bills. So we're now seeing on the Senate side a lot of House bills. Each chamber is quite different, I would say, and I served in both. And the Senate is a much smaller body. It tends to be a little bit less strident, potentially a little calmer, but ironically, it might be even harder to get bills through the Senate than the House because of the small number of folks. So an individual senator or a group of senators can really flavor a conversation pretty quickly. Whereas in the House, it's just a giant riot, chaotic riot, and I think it's certainly designed that way. So we are now, we've swapped bills. Each House is now looking at the others and bills, and I think we're pretty fatigued, quite honestly. I started this morning at 8:15, and I got off half an hour ago with my last meeting, and they're pretty stressful, quite honestly, at this point. So I take walks, and I pet the cat.
Good.
And I take the garbage out. When I'm excited whenever it snows because I get to go outside and shovel.
Yep.
This sort of material, I can handle this. This is in my control. I'm making too much of it, but it's been pretty challenging, quite honestly. And personally, I brought I think 5 bills. One was for the city of Bozeman to do local option tax reform, help reduce property taxes and help our tourists, help us pay the bills around here. And that was defeated. It didn't get out of committee. Another bill as well for wind energy development didn't get out of committee. 2 bills did get onto the floor, and they were, we had a 17-hour day. It was on 2 weeks ago, what's today, Tuesday? So 2 weeks ago yesterday, we had a 17-hour day on that floor, and my bills both got an even vote out of the Senate floor, which means that your bill dies. And those bills were on energy efficiency standards and an electric vehicle. These sort of apple pie with giant amounts of whipped cream and 10 cherries on top type bills, the ones that you say, there's no way you wouldn't like these bills. I mean, how could you not like a bill about electric vehicles and the future of all this wonderful sort of exciting, I'm a car guy, so wonderful, exciting technologies that don't have any tailpipes.
Yep.
And that don't emit anything and that are going to get everybody around for a lot less cost, maybe even without drivers. And, nobody just, there's very little intellectual curiosity, let me say that. And I'm going to sound like I'm disparaging the institution, so I've got to be a little careful. I'm not intending to do that.
Yeah.
But I can just tell you as a citizen that is the reality. A pretty significant lack of intellectual curiosity, I would say, is something that, and maybe that's good. Taxpayers need to know their dollars aren't being spent on wild and crazy, ideas. But I'm getting off subject here, Allison. You're gonna have to reel me in.
All right, I'm gonna reel you in. I mean, I think that your point that we do need to be have accountability and be really thoughtful about how we spend money and how
Right.
we collect money and all of that, like, absolutely.
Right.
But I think what I also heard you just say there is that elections have consequences, and when we elect people who aren't curious and who aren't open to new ideas or new solutions, then good bills die, and good policy is prevented. And I think that's what I heard you say. So elections have consequences. You hear, like, I talk
Yeah.
about that all the time.
The Party Party is spending all of its time this session making up for 16 years of lost time.
Right.
And we'll talk about some of that, but I am kind of impressed with, it sort of feels like a, paint by number, check the box deal where there bills that probably still, that might have been tried for the past 15 years, but haven't really got any relevance anymore. Other bills that are incredibly ideological, the religious freedom bill.
Yeah.
Where if you boil that one down, if my religion trumps your civil liberties and other rights.
Yep.
Which is not the way our country is designed, by the way.
No, it's
So
not.
I mean, there are some real showstoppers in the mix of this. So I just heard a bill today that we haven't voted on yet, just to try and sort of be on the sunny side for a half second, of increasing the cap, so to speak. Right now, in the state of Montana, a solar energy project has to be 50 kilowatts or less. And that's an arbitrary number. And in other states, so a kilowatt is a certain amount of power. Megawatt is 1,000 times that. And so, it's not a lot of power, but we have capped solar development that way by putting a cap on it. And so the cap is trying to be raised by a bill brought in our Energy Committee this afternoon to raise it to 350, which would allow in our community in Gallatin County, the Sims manufacturing plant out at Four Corners built solar energy on their rooftop and could only put a third of their roof, a monster building, and so they built what they were allowed to. This bill would allow them to continue and build out and become more energy independent.
Mhm.
And so that's an exciting thing. We'll see what happens with it. Each one of these are kind of, they're stalking horses. They're sort of symbolic votes. And so far we've been losing most of them. That there's not going to be, and it's not a surprise. I mean, we're not going to see a lot of progressive initiatives in the state of Montana, and we're going to see a lot of very retroactive type thinking. The 15 bills say, just making that up, 15 bills that from every possible angle, it's like a military specification. These bills come in and say, if you are a coal plant in eastern Montana, with so many workers, here are the things that'll happen. All the out-of-state owners, will pay massive penalties if they turn off their part of the plant.
Mhm.
Penalties, that we will require giant water systems if the plant is ever turned off. I mean, things that are just big time impediments to Colstrip going away, which it wants to for all the monetary reasons.
Mhm.
Its power is twice as expensive as any other source. So, we're seeing all these sort of retrograde ideas still gathering speed, and there's not much we can do. We are 19 votes out of 50.
Right.
So
Right.
the votes are 31 to 19. That's this, and I've started highlighting them, and there's several dozen, maybe 3 dozen of those bills, all just on party line votes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So is there like one of the questions that someone sent to me earlier today was kind of about what you were talking about, this bill that would allow Sims to increase their solar panel on their rooftop, and um, energy bills that maybe focus specifically on commercial rather than residential.
yes.
Do those have more of a chance of passing just because um, the majority claims to be supporting small businesses and and large businesses, or is that really not a factor
Well, I
at
think it's part of the thinking. I think it is, and we'll see whether this bill comes out of committee. I wouldn't want to bet on it,
Mhm.
but I think the idea that it's tied to business is a good thing.
Mhm.
Um, and there's sort of a wonky answer to that as well, which is that when you put a bunch of solar on top of a library or a school or a Sims manufacturing plant or a small manufacturer in Bozeman that was a wonderful manufacturer of snowboard equipment, um, who came and testified and have solar on their building. These are folks that want to use the power.
Mhm.
So the utility is a little freaked out that everybody's trying to get into this game where you'd build a whole bunch of solar on your house and you'd pump all of it onto the grid and get 12 cents a kilowatt hour, say, credit for having done so, which is what you pay for power. The reality is that, especially as we get closer to having electric cars, which I know is a few years out and maybe many years out for some of us, wow, you can put solar on your house or on your garage or whatever with batteries, and now you're offsetting $3 gasoline. That's a whole different ball game.
Mhm.
So the prospect for solar systems to actually reduce the consumption of electricity to the grid, not necessarily putting it on the grid, is really a powerful transition. So today, with the Northwestern Energy lobbyist, who I consider a friend, but it was a difficult day for me because I had to ask him, I said, You know, if 1,000 people in Bozeman go and buy an energy efficient refrigerator this afternoon and recycle their old ones, these new machines are twice as efficient and they're not going to draw as much power.
Mhm.
And to a utility that's in the selling power business, that's not a happy moment. But it's the same situation as the solar folks.
Mhm.
So we will be putting more energy efficient washing machines, or we'll put up those little Nest thermostats that'll save 20% of our heating bills or whatever.
Mhm.
And we'll reduce the demand off the grid, save ourselves some money, help the utility in theory.
Right.
And it's the same as buying, as a solar person, putting a bunch of solar on their house and reducing their demand off the grid because they're creating their own. And when you get an electric car in the mix, or two electric cars, one electric car that travels 10 miles a day each way to work, say. Now that's a California model. We don't, all of us commute, but
Right.
that's why we're here actually. But but the idea is still interesting, that if you drive a car 10 or 15 miles in one direction every day to get to work 5 days a week, your car is the equivalent of a 3-bedroom house in
Mhm.
terms of its energy, its electricity demand. And so when you have 1,000 cars in the state of Montana, that's like a whole subdivision that was built overnight.
Mhm.
If you have 10 or 20,000 cars, you can just do the math. I mean, so the utility is not prepared. I don't know if they think that that's all just a bunch of BS and it's never going to happen, or they have no idea what they would do. But I think that solar, our home economics, so to speak, on putting up a solar facility on our property, those of us who would be lucky enough to even consider that.
Mhm.
And if you're not, there are other ways to do it. You get a community, you find a wonderful parking lot and you build solar on top of the parking lot.
Right.
You get 100 homeowners to do that together as a community solar project, and each one of the owners get to take a little bit off. There are other ways to do this, but the long and short is the economics, the home economics of solar, residential solar, are just coming to us. And I think in 5 years, it's going to be a whole different ballgame, frankly, between electric vehicles and storage, battery storage.
Mhm.
I think that's going to completely change up. And I asked the guy today, what are your plans? How are you planning for this? What are your thoughts on, trying to help all these customers try to do what they'd really like to do, and also help the utility perhaps? And he just didn't have an answer for it. So, we live in a world where we have a monopoly utility. And there's a social contract there. I call it a social contract. It's that idea that we'll give you the monopoly, everybody's captive, but you agree to be regulated. And you also agree to listen to your customers.
Right.
And
Well,
that's not happening right about now. So
right. Yeah, and following the market too. I think that that's the thing that I've thought about with our, utility company, is that what I see in the market is that innovation is what's like where it's going, and
yes,
renewable energy is where it's going to be. And so why aren't we trying to,
right.
innovate to meet the market, because the demand is there already. And that's what a good business does, is it meets the market. So,
One of the reasons is because in the rearview mirror, all these power plants, the coal plants, the nuclear plants, the natural gas plants, were all purchased for hundreds of millions of dollars, by hedge funds and large pension funds and whatnot.
mhm.
And needless to say, we weren't buying. Well, we were, because we're ratepayers, but this was all of the centralization. It's very capitalist concept, and it was the centralization of all this money and wealth.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think what really freaks the utilities out is that, hey, if we all put in our own little part and have the assurance that the power that we are consuming is clean and we're not contributing to climate change, that really freaks those folks out because they can't control that. And
Yeah.
sunlight is free.
Right.
So, we are at a very interesting time, and I don't think it's obviously not going to happen in Montana tomorrow or next week, but I think in the next this decade, this next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to start seeing some things really shift.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for that. Let's work towards that. Let's get more Democrats elected to help you
Yeah.
do more energy policy and addressing climate change and just being better consumers really and providing for better consuming of energy resources, I think is also it. So we'll work on that.
It's a fun topic. There's lots to talk about.
Yeah, so much to talk about. So there's really just a few more minutes left, and no one has posted a question yet. So if you have a question you're watching, post them.
Yeah, post questions. But
Yeah.
I do have a theme, Allison, that I prepared, and I'll try and put it into a 60-second little moment for
Okay.
folks.
Please.
Which is that one of the big takeaways of this session is it's a Republican idea. And it's ironic because it goes against the old GOP idea of smaller government, is that the state government is turning into much more of an authority, a thou shalt institution to local governments, both included. And this all happens around any number of issues. The thou shalt coming out of Helena that we're fighting every morning and every afternoon and every committee and all on our House and Senate floor, having to do with sanctuary cities. That was yesterday. That was this morning. Sorry, that was yesterday. Sorry, where local governments shall not, have a resolution that they support the idea of protecting immigrants or folks who aren't from our towns, from, so sanctuary cities, concealed firearms. We talked about energy policy and environmental policy, weakening water quality and septic systems, subdivision review. So everything's getting weakened.
Yep.
So
Air quality.
Yeah. So the air quality. So you have a pretty significant attack on all the things that, in my view, keep us a place that we want to live.
Yeah.
And it also undermines or just repeals this fundamental idea that we all, as a community, can make decisions for how we want to live, and has to do a lot with local health, and our local health boards are being undermined and weakened, if not, there's so many different angles, different bills. It's like a swarm of mosquitoes on us, pushing ideas that I think I would have never expected, certainly from a party that once upon a time stood for smaller government and sort of freedom and liberty, and we hear that every day. And there's attacks on our judiciary, on our education system, the privatization of our public education system. So we're seeing this. We've talked about this multiple times, Allison, and we're seeing it in real time. And it doesn't come in as this giant bill that says, we're going to go change public education. What it does is it's insidious. It comes in from a back door, and all of a sudden we're sitting there going like, holy smokes, these guys are trying to completely change how pre-K is funded. And once they get that door open, they'll spread it to elementary schools and then to the high schools, whatever. So anyway, local government control is being lost.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm spending an awful lot of time. I sit on a local government committee in the Senate, and that's where I spend an awful lot of time trying to hold the line and trying to sort of make the Republican, the majority party, at least acknowledge what they're trying to pull off here. And it feels like a heist. It's a robbery of our own local power and our abilities as a community to make decisions for ourselves. So that's way too long. I'm sorry, I went too far.
No, it's also good, Senator Pope. Like, thank you. And I think pretty much every conversation that I have had with the legislators so far, that comes up every time. Like, everyone is seeing it, and people are asking about it. We notice this in, you know, all the bills that we're kind of following and seeing that this, it's a backlash to, you know, like that. It just feels like a backlash to progress and to local control and local decision making, and it is authoritarian. It very much is authoritarian. And I think, you know, you said that right. So I do have two questions. So one question has been posted. Mindy would like to know, what is the bill that you're most concerned about that we can make a difference on by calling and writing? Like, what would be a bill that you have seen recently that maybe you think there's some room to influence and to either push forward or, you know, try and kill, basically, with public input?
Wow. Well, that's Mindy, I tell you what, you know, all the bills that I'm seeing are one step away from being on the Senate floor, and these are House bills. So once they get to the Senate floor, you know, this morning we heard about vaping, you know, which is, and we had 100 people against it, and I'm sure it's going to go through. And it breaks into all kinds of Indoor Clean Air Act stuff and whatnot. I would offer that that is very much on the front of my mind right now, but the next step on that is that the committee will go into something called executive action where there is no public input. Mm-hmm. And then there's no, you know, there could be an opportunity in that case. This is House Bill 137 by a fellow named Representative Marshall. And that could be one that you could Google and basically, you know, determine. It hasn't been voted out of our committee yet, but I expect it will be. Mm-hmm. It'll be a real major disappointment to me if it does go. But you could go find that committee, the Business and Labor Committee in the Senate, mm-hmm. and just identify and send an email to all of us. Yep. And those who will really make the decision are on the other side. They're the majority party, but they would hear your voice, and that affects, you know, it's really a sadness. I mean, that affects kids under 18 years of age. I mean, this is an epidemic in Montana where 30% of the kids in high school are vaping. Right. And it leads to all kinds of immediate and then longer term health issues for these kids. And, you know, the proponents of this particular bill stood there and just pretended like there was no issue, which is just an outrage. And that's one area. I think, you know, the CPACE, so community solar financing plans, we won't have time to get into the nitty gritty of that today, but CPACE is going to the House side. So Mary McNally, Senator Mary McNally, and Allison, maybe, I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse, but, you know, maybe you could, can't remember the bill number right offhand, but maybe that's something you could then post up on as an afterthought on you know, Facebook to Senator Mary McNally's bill will be in the House Energy Committee. It's a terrific bill that will really help residential solar projects. It helps the financing, so it's not a direct benefit. It's enabling. It'll enable a homeowner to more easily have a solar project on their rooftop, and it's a wonderful bill. And that's one that would be terrific. If we can get that through, that would be a huge benefit. On tomorrow afternoon in the Education Committee, I'll be going up to Helena for a bill that I've carried 2 different sessions and that I've handed to a wonderful Republican, Fred Anderson, who, and this is on the Senate side, sorry, the Senate Education Committee, for giving kids with disabilities 2 extra years to get their high school diploma.
Yep.
And that again, you could write, basically at this point, it's all about communication. So that's House Bill 233, and that would be one that would be a wonderful one to track, and would make a major impression and benefit to a whole important part of our community. So I'm passionate about that one. I'll be getting in my car in the morning to go up and testify on that one. And but thanks for the question. I'm sorry, there's probably another dozen bills. So if you keep asking that question though, on Thursday, those bills will keep coming. There's plenty of work to be done here.
Absolutely, yeah. And we post every Monday, usually a list of bills to, we're kind of watching. And so we posted that yesterday. And then on Wednesday, we send out an email with kind of an updated, refreshed list if anything's changed. The CPACE one is the one that I don't know much about. So I'm not sure if we've had that on our list, but I will add that. I will look that up and add that and post that.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Senator Mary McNally from Billings, and she's wonderful. And she has brought this bill in the past, and it got through the Senate. So it's on the way to the House Energy Committee. And, that might be one of the few bills we even see as Democrats. I'll tell you, yesterday and today, we went through the floor session, starts at 1 o'clock, finishes by 2:30. And there were 15 brand new bills for the Senate to consider it on the floor. The whole Senate considers these bills. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, there were no Democratic bills. Yeah. And today, I think about the same. Yeah. In other words, we're at the point where there aren't any Democrats who have gotten their bills out of committee. Yeah. That's a bit of a sorry statement. And every once in a while, there is one.
Yes, yes.
But that tells a story for me. Mm-hmm. We're not in a bilateral, if you think about your ideas, I'll think about yours, any of that stuff. It's just hard lockdown. Like I said, I think the intellectual curiosity factor has pretty much disappeared. Yeah. And that, for me personally, as a business guy, but also just in my way of thinking about the world, that's when the pond eutrophies and there's algae, and you just go like, wow, that just shut down, it's dead. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the cerebral state of Helena, and that'll probably be on the front page of tomorrow's paper.
I don't think so, but but if it is, that means people are watching.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway.
Well, we're a little over time, but I really want to thank you, Senator Pope, for your time this evening, sharing what's been going on. It's always a pleasure. Yes. We will be doing this again on Thursday live, and we have Representative Denise Heyman lined up for Thursday. But I do, before we leave, I want to, anyone who's still listening, want to say that we are going to celebrate the passage and the signing of the American Rescue Plan, and we're going to send giant thank you cards to Senator Tester and President Biden. And so on Thursday afternoon, late afternoon, we're going to gather at the Gallatin Regional Park to sign these. So wear your masks, socially distant, but let's celebrate the fact that government can work and can work for us, because I think a relief is coming. And, that's a whole nother topic about the money that's coming to Montana and how
Yeah.
how that will be divvied up and what's going to happen with that.
$1 billion
Yeah, I mean,
total
it's,
annual revenue for the
yeah,
state of Montana. That's a lot of money.
it is a ton of money. And so I think that that's going to be a big conversation moving forward too for us and with you all, how that will work and how we can maybe influence to make sure the money's getting to the places that it's needed the most in Montana.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's for another day at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you all again on Thursday.
Be well.
Yes, thank you so much, Senator Pope.